Thursday mornings in the suburbs typically unfold with a predictable calm. The hum of lawnmowers, a stray dog barking, sunlight filtering through half-drawn blinds. That day began no differently, at least at first. Lucas Bennett, 28, stood at his kitchen counter, laptop open, earbuds in, a steaming mug of dark roast coffee in hand. The kind of slow morning that made working from home feel like a small luxury. Outside, sprinklers sprayed neat arcs across the front lawn. A delivery truck rumbled faintly down the street. Lucas barely noticed, his mind on a Zoom meeting set to start in 15 minutes. In the den, his grandfather, Harold Mason, sat in his worn recliner, a dog-eared Western novel open on his lap. At 82, Harold carried the steady posture of a man who'd weathered wars both military and personal without bending. He spoke little, but his silence carried weight. Then came the doorbell. Not a polite ring, but a series of hard, rapid pounds that cut through the quiet like a blade. Lucas froze. That sound didn't belong here. Setting his mug down, he moved to the door and peered through the peephole. 3 men stood on the porch, dressed in black cargo pants and dark vests emblazoned with bold white letters, HOA enforcement. One held a clipboard, another wore dark sunglasses despite the shade. Their stances were firm, expressions tight, like they were expecting trouble, planning to start it. Lucas hesitated, then cracked the door open a few inches. "Can I help you?" The man in front stepped closer, resting a hand on the doorframe. "Morning, sir. We're conducting an emergency inspection on behalf of the HOA. We'll need to step inside. Won't take long." His tone was clipped, rehearsed, like a line he'd practiced just enough to sound convincing. Lucas blinked. "Emergency inspection? What are you talking about?" The man flashed a laminated badge. Shoddy. No seal, no signature, just a name in bold and a logo that looked like it was pulled from a website. "Your property's been flagged for noncompliance. We have the right to inspect for unauthorized modifications. Please open the door." Something felt off. Lucas's grip tightened on the doorknob. "No offense, but I've never heard of this. Do you have a warrant or paperwork from the actual HOA board?" The man didn't respond immediately. Instead, he tilted the clipboard toward Lucas, as if the papers would speak for themselves. But they didn't. No signatures, no stamps, just bold text and legal jargon that screamed amateur. The other 2 men stood silent, watching. Lucas's pulse quickened. His gut had already figured out what his brain was catching up to. These weren't cops, they weren't HOA, and they definitely shouldn't be here. Before Lucas could close the door, the man in front pushed, wedging his boot between the frame and the threshold. The air shifted. Lucas didn't know it yet, but this Thursday morning was about to upend his life and etch his grandfather's name into a story no one saw coming. Lucas squinted, holding the door half closed. His instincts screamed, but he kept his voice steady. "Inspection from who?" "Homeowners Association." "We're authorized," the man said, words sharp and final, like he was used to compliance without pushback. He held up a sheet of paper, just high enough for Lucas to glimpse. It wasn't a legal form, no watermark, no official seal. It looked like something printed from a sketchy email. Lucas stared, then met the man's eyes. "Do you have a warrant?" The question changed the room. The man in sunglasses tensed. The tallest one tilted his head, like Lucas had crossed a line. "You don't need a warrant if you're under community violation," he said, voice rising. "Refusal to comply will be noted. You're already in violation. Don't make it worse." Lucas's fingers twitched on the doorknob. He wasn't a lawyer, but he knew this wasn't right. HOA or not, people couldn't barge into your home over violations. That's what courts and real law enforcement were for. This felt like a shakedown. "I'm going to need to talk to someone from the actual board," Lucas started, voice tightening. He didn't finish. The largest man muscles bulging under his vest, face blank leaned in and shoved the door with his shoulder. Not hard enough to break it, but enough to throw Lucas off balance. Lucas stumbled back, hands flailing. In that split second, the other 2 men stepped inside, boots echoing on the hardwood. The house, moments ago soft with the tick of a clock and the hum of a ceiling fan, now felt like a cage. Lucas's breath caught. He tried to find words, tell them to leave, demand what they were doing, but they were already too far in. Then came a sound. Not footsteps. Not a voice. A cold, unmistakable click from the top of the staircase. Silhouetted by morning light streaming through a second-story window stood Harold Mason. One hand steadied on the banister, The other gripped a 12-gauge shotgun like it was just another tool. He didn't shout or hesitate. His eyes locked on the men below with the calm of someone who'd faced worse and walked away. "You're not from the HOA," Harold said, voice low and clear. "And you're not welcome here." Everything stopped. The three intruders froze. Lucas stood wide-eyed, heart hammering. The silence was heavy, the kind that shifts fates. The click of Harold's Mossberg 500 being chambered echoed like thunder. In most homes, that sound might spark panic. Here, it drew a line. Harold didn't flinch. He stood tall, framed in light, holding the shotgun like an extension of himself. His voice was weathered but sharp. "Out of my house. Now." The intruders turned to stone. The leader, the one who'd forced the door, glanced at Harold, weighing if he was serious. Harold's grip, his steady aim, answered that question. The youngest intruder twitched toward his bell, maybe instinct, maybe nerves. Harold didn't warn twice. In one fluid motion, he raised the barrel and fired not at them, but into the ceiling. The blast tore through drywall, raining plaster and dust. The wall shook, a ceiling fan rattled. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. "I said," Harold repeated, louder, "out. Now." Their confidence shattered. The man who'd reached for his belt backed up, hands raised. Another edged toward the door, eyes darting between the shotgun and the ruined ceiling. Lucas snapped out of his daze, phone in hand, thumb fumbling to dial 911. 911? What's your emergency?" He kept his eyes on the intruders, voice shaky but clear. "We've got 3 armed NDVY duels impersonating HOA inspectors. They forced their way into my home. My grandfather's got a firearm. He's protecting us. Please send officers now." The operator asked questions, but Lucas barely heard. Harold hadn't moved, still in control. The men didn't test him again. They backed toward the door, muttering about procedure and mandates, clinging to their crumbling act. Lucas realized something. This wasn't just a house. This was Harold's house. And no one crossed that line unscathed. They didn't run or argue, just retreated, shadows shrinking from light. Their bravado, so bold minutes ago, dissolved under Harold's unyielding gaze. Lucas stood between them and his grandfather, phone to his ear, the dispatcher's voice distant. Harold's left leg trembled slightly itch, not fear but his arm stayed steady, finger near the trigger with purpose. "Just one move," Harold said, voice calm but final. The leader avoided eye contact, shoulders sagging. The quiet one swallowed hard, palms out. The youngest looked like he wanted to disappear, chest heaving. They weren't enforcers anymore, just 3 men in cheap vests, caught in a trap they'd set for themselves. Lucas saw their fear and realized they weren't professionals. They hadn't expected resistance, especially not from an 82-year-old with arthritis and a shotgun. That made them dangerous cornered animals act rashly. Harold knew it. That's why he never lowered the barrel, never blinked. Sirens wailed faintly, growing louder. Relief and dread hit Lucas at once. "We've got help coming," he said, mostly to himself. "Stay where you are." The men didn't respond. Harold held his ground, a figure of defiance in a faded flannel shirt and orthopedic boots. Justice, sometimes, doesn't wear a badge, just a beard that's seen more winters than these men had birthdays. 6 minutes after Lucas's call, red and blue lights flashed across the street. 2 police cruisers stopped in front of the house, officers exiting with urgency. One kept a hand near his holster, scanning the scene. Another spoke into a shoulder radio. They approached cautiously, knowing only a report of armed intruders and an armed homeowner. The front door stood open. Lucas raised his hand slightly, voice trembling but clear. 3 men inside, impersonating HOA. "Forced entry. My grandfather's armed, but we're safe. He's upstairs covering them." An officer entered, eyes sweeping the room. There was Harold, shotgun lowered slightly, finger off the trigger. Lucas stood pale, phone in hand. The 3 men sat against the wall, palms out, expressions blank. "Sir," the officer said to Harold, "I need you to set the weapon down and step back slowly." Harold nodded, laid the shotgun on the stair, and descended with quiet dignity. Officer Grayson, the lead, took charge. "Sir," he said to Lucas, "explain what happened." Lucas recounted everything. The pounding, fake paperwork, forced entry, Harold's stand. Grayson listened, glancing at the men on the floor. Cuffs came out, no drama, just efficiency. A search revealed zip ties and a CIV Wiley taser, But no valid IDs or credentials, just forged HOA documents. This wasn't a mix-up. It was something darker. Grayson eyed the papers, then Harold, now standing quietly. "Looks like you saved us some paperwork, sir." Harold didn't reply. He didn't need to. The day blurred into statements and EVY Danke bags. Lucas gave details. Harold answered briefly, confirming the OBVYS. The truth emerged. The men weren't HOA. They were former security contractors, fired for violations, now posing as compliance enforcers. They targeted vulnerable homes, elderly residents, new families, issuing fake fines and threats. The real HOA was stunned, denying any such patrols. That evening, Lucas uploaded the doorbell cam footage, the forced entry, Harold stand. Titled, "Fake HOA Tried to Break In. My 82-year-old grandpa stopped them." It went viral, hitting 1.3 million views by day's end. Memes exploded. "Grandpa's justice, don't mess with flannel." Harold, unfazed, just wanted his ceiling fixed. Charges followed: trespassing, impersonation, attempted burglary. The story spread local news, then national. Strangers left thank you notes, a pie, even a brewery's Mason's Justice beer. Officer Grayson stopped by later, smiling. "My dad would have loved your grandpa." He didn't flinch. One night, Lucas tried to talk about it. "I still can't believe you did that." Harold sipped his water, letting silence settle. "Next time they knock," he said, "you knock back harder." He grabbed a beer, stepped onto the porch, and sat under the stars. The shotgun rested nearby, not for show, just because it belonged. For Harold, that was enough. Some doors don't open. Some bite back. This one bit hard.